It's Modern Horizons 3 preview season, so it's time to get pretty hyperbolic and just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. But honestly, I think this land might be one of the best lands we've seen in a very long time. Shifting Woodland is a land that produces green mana and enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest. A pretty minor thing to have to do by having an overgrown tomb or something similar in play. Its bottom ability is Delirium, and it costs 4 mana to activate. Shifting Woodland becomes a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until end of turn. Activate only if you have 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So Delirium isn't really that difficult to get online, so we can make the assumption that's going to be reasonably easy to do so. Bearing in mind that one of the best cards from the last Modern Horizons set was Dragon Rage Channeler, and Dragon Rage Channeler proved that it's very easy to get Delirium online to become a 3/3 flying aggressive creature. Now, I do understand and do appreciate that Dragon Rage Channeler also had a extra bit on itself to enable the Delirium by allowing you to filter things into the bin, but being able to get Delirium online with things like Mishra's Bauble as a card isn't so hard. Fetch land, Mishra's Bauble, Thoughtseize, and then something else. You can even Thoughtseize something at yourself into the bin, like, I don't know, Omniscience. Omniscience is my first pick for the thing we're going to try and turn Shifting Woodlands into. And if you want to buy any of the cards that I mentioned in this video, you can do so from coolstuffinc.com, link in the description below, and use the code KENOBI at checkout to get 5% off your order and to help support the show. If you pay 4 mana to activate Shifting Woodlands with Delirium online and make it become an Omniscience, including bearing in mind it can tap for one of the manas itself. So it's 3 mana and this land. It doesn't tap itself because, well, it's quite good with creatures, we'll come to that more in a moment, but you now have, for the low cost of 4 lands turning sideways, and Omniscience in play. At that point, you can cast anything in your hand. That could be a big fatty that you've not managed to get into the bin to be transformed into via Shifting Woodland. That can be the other fatties and powerful effects in your deck. That can be things like a Griselbrand, or an Atraxa, or an Archon of Cruelty. 2 of these things being very good when you turn them into it off of Shifting Woodlands, one of them being a little less good. I think Atraxa probably isn't the right spot for this deck. So Omniscience is probably the absolute top end of what you can do, and it being in the bin also enables part of the Delirium, and thus it's probably a good place to get to. So how do we get that shit in the bin? Well, we can use looting effects, of course. Fable of the Mirror Breaker being the best looting effect that is a little bit slower, but does a million and one other things like ramping you and creating extra bodies. Fable is probably an auto-include near if we end up in the Jund color pairing. That aside, we can discard things to discard outlets. For example, Collective Brutality. Collective Brutality discarding Omniscience ticks off 2 of the boxes for Delirium and also allows you to attack your opponent's hand to look for cards that might interact with Omniscience, like some sort of disenchant effect. Or we could do things like self-milling. Life from the Loam being dredged for 3 will allow you to put 3 cards on top of your library into your bin and find a Life from the Loam. The important part of Life from the Loam here is that allows you to target Shifting Woodland and put it back into your hand if you accidentally mill it to the bin off of one of your self-mill effects. The new 3 mana creature from Modern Horizons 3/6 has Reach, which is largely unimportant for what we're talking about, and whenever it attacks you mill 3 cards and you may put a land card from among them into your hand. So it mills 3 to enable your graveyard and your Delirium, but also finds you a land. And then on top of all of that, it has this ability that if it's your turn, you can retrace non-land permanent cards in your graveyard. That means you can ditch lands from hand to recast non-land permanents in your graveyard, like, for example, an Omniscience or a Griselbrand. Now, that does seem like an extreme scenario, but I'm talking about when they've wastelanded, or in this case, ghost quartered off your stirring woodlands, or shifting woodlands, should I say, not stirring, shifting woodlands. You now have a way to play in the late game the permanents that's stuck in your bin that you didn't want in hand. Now, all of that is all well and good, but let's talk about other things you can do with Shifting Woodland. For example, like attacking with it. Even if we aren't turning it into Omniscience, it's pretty damn strong if it just says 4 mana to create the best creature land you've ever seen. At one time or another, now outclassed though, Raging Ravine was a 4 mana activated creature land that saw quite a bit of play in Modern. Imagine if you had a land like that was also Griselbrand. The reason I'm picking Griselbrand over Atraxa here is that you're not going to get an enter the battlefield effect when Shifting Woodland becomes that creature. Instead, you want an impressive body with some evasion like flying and lifelink to stabilize, but also an activated ability that absolutely fucking slaps. And let's be honest, Griselbrand probably has the best activated ability of a creature in the history of Magic, if not one of the top 10. So transform it into a Griselbrand for 4 mana, slap them for 7, gain 7, draw 7 cards, or if you're feeling spicy, if you're feeling a little bit self-indulgent, draw 14 or 21 cards if the life total allows it. But then the flip side of that is that Griselbrand can be cast off the Omniscience that you might turn Shifting Woodland into in another line in this theoretical deck that we're brewing. But the problem is that it's quite difficult to get Griselbrand back into play in other ways that are cheap. I guess. In reality, we could play Goyo's Vengeance in this deck too, so we're playing some sort of Abzan or Jund Goyo's deck that allows us to put the Atraxas or the Griselbrands that we end up putting into the bin into play. Again, Atraxa is bad with shifting, but it's pretty good with Goyo's Vengeance and the Omniscience plan, so it's kind of like a part of the whole engine. However, Modern Horizons 2 did give us other toys, so we could go down the non-legendary route by using Persist. Persist says return target non-legendary creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So at that point, we're looking to reanimate something like an Archon of Cruelty, which was the de facto go-to target for this sort of thing, thanks to Modern Horizons 2's card pool. Archon is quite good when put into play, but importantly, it also has an attack trick. This means it's good when we cast it off Omniscience, it's good when we persist it, and it's also good when we turn our shifting Woodland into it and attack our opponent, getting an Edict, getting some life gain, getting a discard, and getting a draw a card. It's just one small portion of, Cruel Ultimatum. If we're rounding out the deck, we're probably looking at Thoughtseize, Collective Brutality, and Grief as part of the package. There was a little bit of talk of Buried Alive making it into the format as well via a reprint in this set, something that hasn't been modern legal before. And Buried Alive, the important thing about it is that it just single-handedly enables Delirium immediately off of a 3-mana sorcery. It is a sorcery itself, and you grab 3 creatures. You grab an artifact creature, an enchantment creature, and a creature, and then Bob's your uncle. You've got yourself a Delirium online, you've got a Grizzlebrand in the bin. If it does end up making it into the set and that wasn't just a rumour, then Buried Alive is an auto-include in this weird brew we've got going. I also started to consider turning it into a Karn Liberated or an Ugin to gain its +1 ability, but then you'd be a Planeswalker with 0 loyalty and die. We can't just turn it into all the most broken things in the format. Although we could turn it into an Ulamog Ceaseless Hunger to give it indestructible and exiling portions of the deck as well. Again, good with the Glorious plan, bad with the Persist plan. I'm probably only scratching the surface of the dumb stuff you could do with this land. I do appreciate that 4 mana is a tall order in Modern and often is quite expensive, but that's the point, it's on a land. So you aren't just jamming a 4 mana sorcery into your deck. We just had Primal Prayers revealed as well, which is a Lurin style effect. It's a 4 mana enchantment that says ETB get 2 energy, and then you may cast creatures that cost 3 or less at flash speed for just 1 energy instead of the mana cost. Seems quite strong, and I feel like this could easily be a deck in Modern. That might be its own different video. However, 4 mana for an enchantment that does nothing but make you 2 energy when it comes into play and needs other things to go on seems like a tall order. Meanwhile, this land is just a green producing land that can help you cast your other spells and goes into a land slot. It doesn't need its dedicated own slot in your spells. I can't reiterate enough how powerful effects are when they're on your lands, whether they be MDFCs that can be land or spell, or whether it's a land with a spell-based ability on it. It's basically like free real estate, especially if it plays into a game plan that already exists like Goyo's or the Persist Reanimator deck, or just fits into a green-black version of Scam. This card seems nuts, if I'm completely honest, and easily... Is it my pick of the set now? Oh, it's hard to say, because maybe the deck just won't be fast enough for mod. The real upside is that it is quite hard to interact with. Outside of Ghost Quarters and the new double white pipped Ghost Quartering creature, you don't tend to get effects that blow up lands that easily. Of course, you can blow it up once it turns into the creature with your creature removal like Solitude or similar. Like I said, we've scratched the surface. What about turning it into an Aetherflux Reservoir or Bolus's Citadel to complete that combo, for example? There are 1,000,001 things we can do with this. It seems so unbelievably good. I'm very, very excited to play with this card. I can't wait to brew around Modern Horizons 3. I'm trying to get my Discord to post lists that I can innovate on or tune or just play outright on my Discord too. If you want to get involved with that, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Is this card as busted as I think it is? Because I think this will just spawn its entire own sneak and show / reanimator and show sort of archetype. I generally think it's an archetype defining and creating card, like Dark Depths before it and Field of the Dead, although probably not quite as good as those two in terms of ending the game, because those require a few less hoops to jump. I've been Vince, also PleasantKenobi on the internet. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.